Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's on the dot 4 o'clock. And before I get started with the items of business on the agenda today, I'd like to start by recognizing the loss and the unfortunate passing of board member and board chair, Councillor Bernie Morelli. Bernie first served as a member of the Police Services Board from December 1994 to November 1997, and during that time serving as chair from 96 to 97. He once again served as a member of the Hamilton Police Services Board from 2000 to present, and served as chairman from 2000 to 2009, and again from October 2013 to present. A lot of people don't know this, but during this time, Bernie also served as president of the Ontario Association of Police Services Board from 2006 to 2007. And for those that knew Bernie, it was evident that he had a love of policing and the important role our police personnel play in our community. His passion ran deep and close to home for his beloved Hamilton Police Service. He will be missed. And so at this time, I'd like everyone to rise and we'll give a moment's silence to Bernie. Thank you very much. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very suitable words at this time. I had the privilege of being the longest-serving board member currently sitting on this board, obviously before Bernie's passing. When I got appointed to the board, Bernie was a mentor. He had a passion for this police services, as you indicated, but he also had a real passion for people, and I think that was demonstrated in the services yesterday. I want to extend and take this opportunity to extend a thank you to the chief, and the role that the police services played for the services yesterday was extraordinary, and I was never so happy to see the presence of our men and women in uniform, and certainly the horses in front of the church was a statement, and certainly a lasting statement. Great picture in the paper, and I know that Bernie would be looking down proud of the type of service that took place yesterday and how everyone came together. So I want to say that, and I also sat on the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and I sat on a committee that dealt with policing across this country, and I can tell you that Bernie Morelli's name and reputation in the police services touched many people across this country. That anyone had any involvement with police services because of his tenure, his length of tenure in police services. He had the respect of many of those that he worked with. So he will be missed, and your comments were very appropriate, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And the funeral did a great job yesterday. The crowd, probably what Bernie would have expected, but I thought it was exceptional. I thought the Honor Guard did a great job, not only yesterday, but also at the visitation. And the horses were very appropriate. I believe Bernie was a supporter of the mounted unit, and having them standing at the front door was, I know my wife and I were very impressed by them, so thank you for that. And I told Susan earlier, I thought she nailed it today. There was people there in running shoes and people there with nice coats on, and that's the cross-section Bernie could deal with anybody. So thanks for your comments, Councillor Whitehead. So I'll now call the official meeting to order, and I'm going to turn the operation over to our board administrator for the election of a chair and a vice chair. Lois?
Good afternoon. Pursuant to the Police Services Act and the Police Services Board procedural bylaw, the election of positions for chair and vice chair are done at the first meeting of every year. So I'll ask for a motion for the chair position for the 2014 year.
So I nominate Councillor Ferguson for chair. That was clicking early, so.
Sorry, I didn't see you. Go ahead, sir.
I think I clicked. So I nominate Councillor Ferguson for chair.
Thank you. I have a seconder for that, Nancy. Thank you. Councillor Ferguson, will you stand for chair for 2014?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Asking for further nominations? Asking for the final and third time for further nominations? I have a motion to close nominations, please? Congratulations, Member Ferguson, on the position of chair. And so now I'll pass it over to you for the position of vice chair.
Well, thank you everyone for that unanimous support. I appreciate that. And we'll now open up for the position of vice chair. Did you want to move something? Do you want to move it, Nancy, or?
I'd like to move that perhaps we continue with the rotation of individuals for vice chair. It seems to have worked well, and it also provides all members of the board with the opportunity to serve in that position.
Are you seconding that, Councillor Whitehead?
Support of that motion.
And just for clarity purposes, as chair, would we continue the rotation where we left off last fall?
I would suggest that, if I remember right, it would have been
Whoever follows the letter F.
correct. Thank you.
Okay. So is there any other comments on this before I call for the vote on going back to a rotating vice chair? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, thank you. And we'll now move on to the ceremonial part of the agenda, and I'll call on the Chief for the Pride Award. Chief Takar.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the Police Services Board, Chief Takar, Deputy Chiefs Ken Leendertz, Eric Gert, senior officers, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dave Calvert, and I am the Superintendent of Support Services. Today, I would like to present a very special award. The Chief's Pride Award is bestowed to members of the Hamilton Police Service and members of the community who go above and beyond normal expectations. These are special acts of compassion, support, and quality of service that are worthy of recognition. In February 2013, Tim Richard, Vice President of Sales for Weaver Apps, contacted us. And it was out of concern. He found it troubling to continue to hear that people were still driving impaired. His area of expertise is developing programs for smartphones and felt that creating an app might assist us with impaired driving. We met several times with Tim to discuss the service needs as identified in our business plan and about the emerging field of smartphone apps and our strategic road safety initiatives. Aware that we had no budget for this, Tim was not deterred as he felt so strongly about apps and our work. Tim freely contributed his time and expertise to assist the service in developing a road safety app. We launched the app in time for the long weekend in May. So far, the app has had over 1,000 downloads, has received positive feedback from the community. It has information on distracted, impaired, and aggressive driving, locations of our collision reporting centers, and traffic safety tips. Our favorite feature is the warning you get when you first click on the app: do not use this app while you're driving. Tim's gracious contribution to our service has produced a smartphone app that is slick, professional, and positively received by the citizens. Without Tim's encouragement, guidance, and expertise, the service would not have been able to test this new emerging technology. The Hamilton Police Service Strategic Road Safety Initiative is all about education. Road safety education plays an important role in shaping the attitudes and behaviors of children and young people, ensuring they become responsible drivers, passengers, pedestrians, and cyclists. We recognize the need to better communicate and reach citizens. With Tim's app, we can now include a mobile option. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much. Just before we get underway with the balance of the agenda, I just want to remind everyone, the board members and the audience, that today is the first Lincoln Alexander Day. It is his birthday, and the mayor's assistant just came in to remind me that there's a book of condolences that you could sign that's in front of the mayor's office. So on the way out tonight, you may want to go in and make some comments and sign the book. And Chief, you have some further comments on this.
Thank you very much, Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the board, representing Hamilton at the provincial level, a motion was recently presented and supported by provincial members McMeekin, Andrea Horvath, Monique Taylor, Tim Hudak, and Paul Miller. This multi-party proposal was co-sponsored by our very own Paul Miller, and after receiving unanimous all-party support, today we celebrate the very first, January 21st, as Lincoln Alexander Day. And everyone around this table knows the importance of Lincoln Alexander to the police service. Link was our honorary chief of police and proudly wore the uniform of the Hamilton police chief. But more importantly, he was a symbol of hope, opportunity, hard work, and commitment. And I, as many of you, have heard the story that he could only properly tell in his resonating voice, that inflection, that pace, the emphasis, as he told the story of his mother's determination, which was clearly passed on to him, and the story that would best be entitled and known to all of us as "Go to School, You're a Little Black Boy," thus beginning his unending commitment to education, and that is reflected in the so many schools that are proudly displaying his name. But Link is so much more than the name. He is so much more than a school, and yes, he's even more than the highway. We had the pleasure of knowing him, of talking with him, and being able to call him our friend. And today let us commit to share the memory of Link that is honored in this special day, and never forget him as the Honorable Lincoln Alexander.
It was very well said, and I appreciate you bringing that to the attention of everyone. Okay, we'll move on now to Terry.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I became aware of, I think, two requests for deputations in front of this board. I think one was Karen and one was Norm Dorr. My understanding, they didn't meet the criteria, the timeline of 7 days. I don't see anything in my package that identifies they made that request. I believe Norm Dorr is here. I don't know, is it Karen? Is the other one? If there's a desire and willingness, and if they're prepared, I'm quite willing to move a motion to allow them to provide that deputation this evening.
Councillor Whitehead, and I think, Lois, correct me if I'm wrong, is that at the Police Services Board, delegation requests have to be in 7 days before the board meeting, and it's the board chair that agrees to hear the deputation or not, to have the board hear it. Unlike
correct.
council, where it's actually the committee, the standing committee, that would make that decision. Am I correct in that, Lois?
That is correct.
And the deputations that Councillor White is speaking of have been informed that they would be available to make a presentation at the next meeting?
I haven't heard from either one of them, but they did not say that they only wanted to present at this meeting.
Okay, you did forward the forms to them and did forward the policy to them?
I did.
Okay.
And I did also mention that it would be presented to the chair for a decision to be made to be presented to the board on February 17th.
Okay, thank you. And hearing that, Councillor Whitehead, do you still want to place your motion, or would you be comfortable now waiting till the next meeting and following the policy?
I think what surprised me, I didn't see the, because normally, as you know, at council, when there's a delegation request, the actual letter of correspondence making that request is usually in our package.
And that's what's different here, is because it's the
Correct.
chairman that makes that decision, not the committee now.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So we'll leave it till the next meeting then?
I'm fine with the
Perfect.
next meeting, Mr. Chair. I just want to ensure that it is in process and that it's being considered.
Well, I have every intent of approving them to come forward at the next meeting in delegation.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's move on now to declarations of interest. Is there any? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. And before I call for a motion on 5.1, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to go down each one to see if anybody has any questions on them. So 5.2, any comments, questions, errors, or omissions? Seeing none, 5.3, 5.4, and 5.5. Just a quick question on 5.5. If I can, I'll direct the question to the chief. Maybe you want to deflect it to someone else. Have we seen a significant spike in the amount of paid duty that we're charging out to festivals in recent years?
Say that it's been a consistent growth area, but I wouldn't say there's not an immediate spike that comes to mind, no.
Okay, because I know some members of council, in fact, Ken was good enough, along with Superintendent Bond, to come to the grant subcommittee because we were getting a lot of, I don't know if complaints are the right words, but concerns about the cost of paid duty officers now as it relates to festivals. And I think Ken may have something further on that, if that's okay with you, Chief?
Yeah, sure.
Deputy?
Mr. Chair, yes, I have supplied a report, and I think we're coming to February or March meeting of that
perfect.
committee. The analysis that we did is that there has not been a significant increase in the pay that the officers receive, but there has been an increase in the amount that's charged because the grants committee has now put the cost to the
Festival organizers, yes.
and now there's a charge of HST of an additional 13%, which you didn't have before. There has also been a significant increase in the amount of special duties, and so that's why you may see a variance in the amount that we're receiving in paid duties. So, but the biggest jump has been the 13 to 15% increase from HST being charged.
Okay, and I'm pleased you're coming back to grants because we can have a more wholesome discussion at that level. Go ahead. Please use your microphone, because I can't hear you.
5.5, December 16th. I'd like to pull that out, have a discussion around that. December 16th, so there was a committee comprised of Vice Chair Ferguson, Jesnewitz, Whitehead, created to meet with the chief of the budget. I didn't see a report on that, so I wanted to have a report on that and see who met.
Would it be appropriate to talk about that?
Absolutely, but I want to report on that. Who was there? What happened? Thank you very much. Great.
Microphone, please.
The binder's so thick today, it hides the light. Okay, discussion agenda. Item 6.1. The board received an update from Member Whitehead and Member Jesnewitz with respect to Hamilton Police Services budget process. Is there any update on that delegation that you met along with Deputy Leenders?
Yeah. First of all, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the time that our staff, Tony and Ken, took out of their schedule to meet with Walter, myself, and Mr. Shaker. It was certainly an enlightening process for us to better understand our budget and our budget processes. And it was very helpful that Tony provided us some information, very valuable information. I would suggest, Mr. Chair, that there are a couple areas that I want to sort of highlight that still are concerning to me. One of them is in overtime. Apparently, the way we administer overtime is that whether it's days off or whatever, they don't take it right away. So what happens when they acquire the overtime? Over the year, they can go through different cycles, whether it's incremental increases or promotions or so forth. And at the time they take the overtime, they would be paid at that higher rate, even though they acquired that overtime at a lower rate. And so I'm going to ask for clarification if I misinterpret that, or is that the current practice? So I'm going to ask that to the chair.
Who's your question to?
To whoever can answer that question.
That's correct.
So I guess my concern, Mr. Chair, is that, again, if we're matching the dollars or the pennies and the dollars take care of themselves, is the old cliche. My concern is that that people are acquiring their overtime at a set rate. Under the Act, or even the contract, we have no obligation to pay them any higher than what they acquired at the time they acquired that overtime. And yet, because of the timing that they take that overtime, whether it's in lieu of time off or so forth, that if there were adjustments made throughout that year, they're in fact going to receive a higher rate of pay or a rate of time based on their new rate, not their old rate. And And I do have concerns about that approach, Mr. Chair, so I'm not sure how to address at this point other than just to raise it as a concern. Whether we can look at a way to manage that on a go-forward basis, I think is worth further dialogue with staff. But if there was one area of concern, that was one of them. The other area, Mr. Chair, that was identified is the sick pay, or the reserve. And I did talk to, in fact, I had discussions with our internal auditor, and I had discussions with our auditor, and I had discussions with Mike Zagaric. Currently, our sick reserve is clear through the research that our internal auditor did that there is no best practice in regards to the liability versus the amount of money you have in the reserve. And currently, we're at $5,400,000 plus. Our liability, I think, is around $19 million. So right now, the benchmark we have for the police is at 28%. There was a report that just went to FNAA, or is going to FNAA, that's identifying for the city of Hamilton, for example, the fire department is at 18%. So we're at 28% with the police services in regards to that benchmark, and at fire, it's at 18%. So there doesn't seem to be a standard, a best practice in regards to what that should be. Now, I did have discussion with Mike Zagaric. This could be adjusted because you can have a year that you might expect a lot of retirees, for example. Now, let's be clear, we haven't drawn on those accounts for some of them for a long time. I believe on this case with the police services, the last time we drew on it was 2012. We drew over $200,000, and but we collected $130,000 in interest. So it's an interesting bearing account. So I think that we need to develop a policy, quite frankly, and what would be a reasonable target in regards to the reserves for that account. We can't do that now. I think that's a good discussion to have in regards to what our expectations are in regards to retirement, what the trends are. Do we look over a 5-year term? When I talked to Mike Zagaric, he indicated that they feel that the fire is in fact too low at 18% of the liability. And so they're looking at putting, I think, $360,000 a year to bring that up. But again, the overall, if you took the police, the city, and fire, and you took that all together, it's at 25%. It appears that 25% would be the target. But it's, again, Mr. Chair, through these discussions, I think it's worth having that dialogue to set a policy, what would be appropriate reserve for those kinds of accounts, so that we're not contributing more and greater than, and we can utilize those dollars for other things within the police services. So that was another useful discussion that came out of a meeting with Mr. Shaker. At one time, I would suggest that I was looking at maybe taking some of those dollars and offsetting the taxes. So I think I heard a question, do we meet with staff to talk about the budget? And I can clearly tell you, Mr. Chair, that the reason why, the only area that I had thought there might be more room to look for some savings or diverting of funds was this particular area. I am comfortable suggesting that's a longer-term discussion, not something we're going to resolve tonight, because I think we have to develop the policy. So as far as the budget's concerned, I have no other issues or concerns at this time. The last piece, Mr. Chair, is I do believe, and through this discussion, that it's good for any organization. Currently, we have what's called a consolidated audit, where the police services provide their information. There's a plan developed, and the external auditor does that audit. They don't audit and catch everything. And we talked about the library board. In fact, it has an independent audit. And I'm sort of caught between doing an independent audit and the fact that we have what's called a consolidated audit. And again, this is through these discussions, Mr. Chair, that I believe that maybe as a stepping stone, we could pursue every so many years an independent audit, just to ensure that we're offsetting any concerns or perception of concerns with the police services budget. If that's not practical, at the very least, maybe a practice we can, and again, this is just out of the discussions on a go-forward basis, we could look at, when we get a general auditor or part of the consolidated audit, we can have the auditors come in first and meet with the board, raise whatever concerns and issues we have, and then when they do their part of that consolidated audit, which we don't do currently, we have as opposed to getting a report, we actually have the auditors invited back to the board. We get the report and we can ask questions to us, so raise our comfort level and just create a greater level of transparency. So I think the discussion and dialogue, Mr. Chair, with Mr. Shaker has been very useful, quite frankly, because it's sort of drawn some attention to these areas. And it's not something we're going to solve tonight, but it's certainly something that it gives us a starting point for further discussion on a go-forward basis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to, thank Ken and Tony and everybody. Sorry, Mr. Randazzo, John. I've been hanging around him too long, so. And actually, this whole experience taught me that I'm going to make a lousy accountant. And so I've learned a lot from you. And at the same time, Ken, I'm definitely not anywhere near police material. So I thank you for that. But even more importantly, I'd really like to thank Mr. Shaker, Chandra Shaker, for his countless hours in helping this newbie on this board and trying to, in his patience, in kind of dragging me along, because actually Terry had no problems with keeping track of this, but I actually had, this was actually a new thing for me. So other than the experience that I've had with this, but I'd like to really focus on my part of the conversation here. I'd like to really, or my contribution would be, I'm very pleased and I'm very happy that we have the Shakers in Hamilton that could actually spend the time and the dedication to bring these things out. And what came out of that showed me how much pride and how much how great of a service we have, and at the same time the accounting part of the numbers that we were actually going through, and the way the both of you and John and Ken and John came along, and the time that you spent with us and actually bringing it down to line by line, it really helped giving us the confidence. And at the same time, because the work is so good, it would be really to the board's advantage, in my opinion, is to actually have that. I would support the audit. What came out of that, we found out that the audit wasn't $250,000. We found that it was considerably less, and I would like to support the audit side to enhance the great work you people do.
Okay, I have further reports now from both people who met with Mr. Shaker, and I'm not hearing any motions coming out. I think, Councillor Whitehead, your idea is it's a long-term discussion, so if there's no one else that wishes to speak to this, I might look for a motion just to receive it. Oh, Chief, sorry.
Thank you. There's an awful lot of material that's just been covered, so let's try and parse off some of what's been discussed already. With respect to the overtime issue and how the payments are made, the number of people that advance through the seniority tree with anniversary dates or promotions, very, very specific on how that is handled in the financial system. That and the sick issue alone are instruments completely of the collective agreement and the business process systems. And we have spoken very often at this table about investing in the development of those business process systems to give HR, to give finance, to give us the ability through the development of a time and resource management system to have a much more complex strategy in place to be able to do that strategic analysis and get better answers to those questions. To simplify the issue, we are still working off a paper base, and the slips that are put in and that are reviewed, audited, checked, verified, and then eventually paid. In order to do the analysis of that, we'd be putting teams of people into rooms with boxes of paper. We need to advance past that. We have spoken for many years about the development of that system into the Hamilton Police Service. I do recognize that this is a bargaining year and the board is about to enter bargaining. if the board is interested in addressing the issue of the overtime payouts and the seniority and the anniversary dates, along with the sick liability that presents itself at $18 million, I'll be happy to see what the board comes up with in bargaining. And I did highlight a number of months ago that depending on what happens at the bargaining table directly impacts that $19 million and any alternative strategy that may be brought forward by the Police Association. With respect to the auditing, we comply with all of the city's processes and procedures with respect to auditing. It is quite clear in this budget that is before you as one of the items later tonight, there is no money in this budget for an independent audit outside of what is already created within the budget unless the board adds that. However, we would certainly participate in any audit. We have great confidence in our staff, in our supervisors, in reviewing and approving expenditures. We have great confidence in our revenue generation streams and great confidence in our finance people to make sure that we are in compliance. But right now, any move towards an independent audit requires a full cost analysis, including a staffing impact for the events that take place when auditors come in and have to be given all of that assistance to provide that audit to the board. So that is work that is yet to be done.
Okay, and not hearing any motion to move in that direction, other than maybe during the city's internal budget, we may have a discussion about what's the right percentage to use as a reserve.
I appreciate what the chief brought forward. I think the form I brought it in is one of further dialogue and exploration. There's no motion before us here today, nor do I plan to. I plan to continue working with the staff to look at, again, when we talk about those liability exposures, there is no best practices in what the percentage of liability versus revenue or reserve should be. So I think it's only reasonable from a best practice to align ourselves with where the city's going on what that percentage might be. So this is more about, hey, we learned some things for this. And the one piece I forgot to mention, we should also, when we're dealing with budgets, Mr. Chair, knowing full well that we're getting $700,000 additional dollars every year for probably another 2 years anyway, for up to $4.9 million, that when we're dealing with our budget, we should be dealing with the fixed budget, and those additional dollars should be dollars, I believe. And again, this is part of the dialogue, and it's just another way of doing things in regards to, there's already transparency, I want to be clear, it's just making greater transparency and how those additional revenues are being earmarked or allocated within the services.
So can I just add, I'd just like to receive what we...
You moving that?
Yeah, I would like to do that. I'd like to move to...
Is there a second to receive the presentation? No action?
And then just keep it at that. And anything else, Chief, that you would like to add? Or Ken or John? Deputy, sorry.
I'm not sure what the board is receiving. There's no report before you, right?
No, the verbal presentation from the two members, that's all.
All right.
So there's a seconder to that? Okay. So I had discussion on it? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. 6.2, I understand, Councilor Whitehead, you wish to table this?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Administrator Close, do we need a motion to table, or can that simply come from a member and it proceeds? Not sure of protocol here at the place.
It was noted in minutes of December that it would be brought back to this meeting to be discussed. So I would say we would have to table it again.
Okay, so motion to table till when?
Mr. Chair.
Okay, second? Okay, second by Walt. Discussion on the tabling motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. Okay, 6.3, the Hamilton Police Services operating budget. And Member Levy, you asked the question about the panel of three that was going to meet with staff, and I'll just like to respond to that. I'll tell you my personal experience. I was off on vacation over the holidays, and I got back. I tried to organize some dates with Councillor Whitehead because we have very busy agendas when we get back. We weren't able to do that, so I did it on my own. I went and met with the chief and the deputies and Ms. Randazzo, and raised questions about some of the issues I may have. And at this time, I'd just like to ask a question of the chief. And I know, Chief, we had this discussion when we met over at police headquarters. You are not taking any significant monies out of any reserve funds in order to hit the target of 2.98%. Is that correct?
Yes, to be clear, there is money that will move from the reserves to the operating budget, but is replaced. It's the same process that is used by the city, and the vehicle reserve is the example that we talked about it. But we are not taking capital reserve money out of the reserves for the purpose of reaching this budget number.
The operating account.
Right.
Okay. So that was the only question I had. Was around the reserve funds, and recall it was handed out to us at the meeting, and I couldn't get my head around it, and wanted to meet with the chief and our CFO and the deputies to go over that. So my questions have been satisfactorily answered, Member Levy. So I'm prepared now to support the budget, and I'll now go to other members who may or may not have questions. Unless, Madeline, do you have any other questions on that? Use your microphone, please.
I just, when members of our board want to meet, have these answers for us. I mean, I think it was important. Same thing. The first one. I think it was nice that, there was some meeting that we got the heads up on what we found out from that, because it's insightful. We have questions, people have questions around the budget, and that was why it was struck, so that you would bring back some of that. So you explained, you were busy. Member Whitehead was busy. I don't know about Walt was busy.
I explained my question too that I had for staff, and I met with them, and I had the chief confirm in public what the answer to that was tonight.
Right, okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Whitehead.
Yeah, actually, I had informed the vice chair that I want to be on the speakers list, so I just wanted to let you know that it was on it. And I appreciate the question. In fact, when we met with Ken and Shaker and John, that was part of the process. In fact, my areas of focus and concern were clearly identified and talked about, and I've addressed it here. So yes, I did put a call into the chair and said, we still have this sort of outstanding where we're supposed to collectively try and meet with staff on the budget. We end up doing it more ad hoc, where I think Walt and I met with Ken and John and Shaker was part of that discussion, and those are the areas I want to focus on. And I know that the chair had made it clear what his area of concern was that he was going to address directly. So maybe it wasn't the most formal way of doing it, but certainly we got the job done in regards to the intent of that motion.
Okay. So I see no more other questions around that the group of three want to have those questions answered. So I now want to go up and open the budget up for debate. And I think we're looking for approval tonight because it has to go to council for presentation on Thursday. So is there any further discussion on the budget? And if not, I'll entertain a motion to accept it, approve it, and move it on. Just 1 second. I think Madeline's up ahead of you.
Nope.
So Member Levy, and then Nancy, and then down to Terry. Go ahead, Madeline. Oh, you're moving it? Oh, you didn't say that.
Oh, no, I said approve.
Okay. So you're moving the budget, and you're seconding it, Nancy? Now we're up for discussion. Councillor Whitehead.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank staff. I want to thank the chief. I wish I could say we can bring it lower, but being reasonable around this table and understanding the pressures we have, I think that this was a yeoman job done by our police services and our senior management. Yes, I tried my darndest even through this process to see if the reserves are too high and we can move some dollars to offset the budget, even bring it lower. But I'd be just misleading anyone to indicate that that we'd be misled in regards to the liabilities and the operation needs of the police services. So for those reasons, Mr. Chair, and I've been clearly outspoken on the budget, again, I want to extend my thank you, and I will be endorsing and supporting this budget before it's time.
Thank you. I think the last meeting I said I sensed a sigh of relief come over the city when I heard the 2.98%, and I think we'd all like to see it at zero, but if we understand that 88% of our cost is salaries and wages, and for a good part of that, it's out of our control. So, Chief, you have comments before I call the vote?
I just hold my comments until after your vote, if you don't mind.
Sure. So any more discussions from any members on the budget? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? As carries unanimously. Okay, Chief?
Thank you very much. The budget process is one that the members of the service put an awful lot of effort into, and in this administration, 4 of the last 5 budgets have been presented under 4%. Previous to that, 7 of 9 budgets were in excess of 4%. And I want to congratulate the people who are seated behind me, and that is the senior officers, the managers, the supervisors, our sergeants, for the development of the budget from the grassroots up. A zero-based budgeting concept being utilized for justification of all of the dollars. We are very proud of the service that our officers provide to this community, supported by our civilian members. It is not possible to deliver public safety in this city without them, and I think the final word on the budget should go to the frontline delivery of service people who are out there every minute of every day, providing the best policing services in the city that we have seen ever.
Thank you, Chief, and you should feel comfortable with the fact you got unanimous support tonight. So to you and the whole team to my left, congratulations.
Ask a question on the 2014 budget. Have we closed the books on that yet? Do we know if there's a positive or negative variance? I mean, I think that was a concern when we made a presentation last time to council, that the books hadn't been closed, so that information wasn't readily available.
The 2013 budget is
Sorry.
what you're talking about, and those books are not closed, and we don't anticipate through the city's process the finalizing of all of the accounts, which I understand is just taking place this week. This week, we won't actually have that information probably somewhere into the end of February, early part of March.
And are we projecting at all at this point any idea of whether we're going to have a positive or negative variance?
I think we will be within budget. We will not be over, but I don't know how far that will be at this point. The final tabulations just aren't done.
Thank you.
Okay, move on to item 7, any new business?
Well, I would just like to thank the chief, and I took part in the use of force training, not took part, actually, I was actually an observer of the use of force training, and I'd like to thank the chief and Sergeant John Asbrogas, and his excellent team. My day was I knew how much out of fit I am, and at the same time I grew to appreciate a lot of what you great people up there in uniform have to go through, and your testing and the excellence in the testing provided by this great service of ours. I'd like to thank you.
Okay, any other items of new business before I go to the chief? I want to hear from the board first. Any other new business? Seeing none, Chief.
If I could respond to Member Juknewitz, thank you for attending and participating in the use of force training. The modules are geared towards testing our officers in response to operational scenarios and situations that they will face. As you clearly saw, based on many concepts of the use of force approved model, de-escalation, disengagement, tactical communication, yes, testing all of the use of force options, but building a continuum of response. And as approved by this board, that continuum of response for frontline officers also now to include the taser as a result of the board's approval in the last series of meetings in the new year, in the old year, and in the new year we have started that CEW training for our members, so that will be built in as well. So the entire gambit of law has been covered, particularly around the issues of mental health, mental wellness, the police response to emotionally disturbed persons and persons in crisis. So thank you for going.
Okay, so I think that concludes our public portion, so we'll call
I have a matter of new business.
Oh, another,
I have
sorry.
a new business item.
Yep.
The last board meeting that took place was on December the 16th. And on December the 17th, we did experience the loss of Staff Sergeant Ian Matthews, a longtime professional, very learned, well-respected member of our service. And that took place, he died by suicide on December the 17th, the day after our meeting. Ian was an engaging, outgoing professional, deeply embedded in his work, and he provided the level of public safety and public service that we all strive to provide. So the issues of D
Order,
Squad
please.
and his leadership in providing his guidance over the last year to the members of D Squad, I want to particularly recognize their efforts. And I would ask that the board and the members present please rise and observe a moment of silence for Ian.
Any other new business, Chief? Okay, then, Councillor Whitehead.
I feel compelled because I got to know Ian personally over a number of years, long before I even arrived as a board member, Mr. Chair. When he was in Vice, when he was undercover, when he was going to jails and in very dangerous situations. And this guy, he lived the life of policing. He came from Ireland, and I believe he was a constable in Ireland, and certainly during the times where things were pretty tough over there with the IRA. He came over here, and he made a home in Hamilton. He drew the respect of the legal community. He drew the respect of even the criminal community. I mean, how often do you have criminals saying, I want the guy that arrested me to drive me off to prison? Because there was a profound respect for the work that this individual brought to the table. And not only that, but it was pretty clear to me that he had a broad respect, Mr. Chair, with the police services in this community and all the men and women in uniform. He was an individual that had broad shoulders, took everyone's issues on, and never really being open about what challenges he might be going through. He will be a loss to the service, and certainly a lot of respect and a loss to his family and friends. And certainly I will miss him and all the stories he used to tell. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see no other items of new business, so call for an adjournment. We'll take a 10-minute recess to get set up to allow the council chambers to get cleared and set up for the in-camera portion. Well,